ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to each and every one of you. It's wonderful to be here in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we're very pleased that South African Airways could be our principal airline host. So I want to start by paying tribute to South African Airways, a great airline with a great legacy, for their wonderful hospitality and support to African aviation.
Current outlook is for the next 20 years that the global industry will need over 41,000 airplanes at a market value of over $6 trillion. By units, it's about 3/4 single-aisle airplanes, but by dollar value, it's a little more than 50% single aisles, a bit more than 40% for wide bodies.
The purpose of this workshop or meeting is to articulate the concerns of African airlines on certain pertinent issues such as aircraft performance, maintenance reserves, and fleet management. So it is from an airline-centric point of view. For many years, we at African Aviation have firmly believed, and still do, that aviation, the African aviation industry, can be a vital catalyst for Africa's economic and social advancement.
That the intra-Africa air travel connectivity remains significantly broken, with most travel between African cities completed through via hubs that sit outside the continent. Visa restrictions between countries remain the major inhibitor of free movement of Africans in their own continent. IATA projections indicate a 5.4% growth of the African aviation sector over the next 2 decades.
We've seen the AFIC insurance-backed financing technique come to the market this year. One of the things that Standard Chartered Bank, which is very strong in Africa and very strong in China, is trying to work on is the China-Africa corridor. We're working with a number of Chinese development funds who are keen to participate not only in aircraft leasing business in Africa, but also in airport infrastructure.
The IMF notes how South Africa and Nigeria, the two largest economies, have been hampered in their growth due to political and policy uncertainty. However, in both cases, recent policy and governance reforms are giving rise to positive sentiment that should restore confidence and boost economic growth. Annual GDP growth across Africa is expected to accelerate from 2.8% in 2017 to 3.5% this year. South Africa and Nigeria's growth is rising from below 1% last year to almost 2% for this year. Policy changes, not only in these two powerhouse economies of Africa, but for all African nations that will benefit from a more dynamic set of policies, represent another big set of opportunities.
The African air market is ripe for growth, ripe to be taken advantage of by investments by the countries that are on the continent.
All of you are aware that Africa has taken a decision to have a common market. Africa has taken a decision to make it that trade has no borders.
But insurers clearly recognise The premium income they're charging cannot pay for one catastrophe loss, but it is definitely going to pay for these claims every year. And insurers are deciding that airline insurance is not an insurance that is profitable in the medium term. In fact, some insurers are deciding that aviation insurance in general is not a profitable business to be in.
We have 4 individuals that cover the world for commercial aircraft and structured finance.
Investec has been in the aviation finance space for about 15 years. We've got a local team and a global team as well, which also allows us to bring local knowledge and international experience to transactions.
We are a team of 6, and our role is to assist customers, airlines or lessors, to put in place the financing for their aircraft acquisitions if they wish. Which we do in about 80% of cases.
DVB is essentially a hybrid of a bank and a leasing company. We do lending, we do leasing, we also offer management services and advisory services. And as an institution, we focus pretty much on the asset.
We started with an accidental interest in Africa in 1998 through a call out of the blue from Air Madagascar. And over the years, we've worked with several African airlines, including KQ, Air Madagascar, Air Malawi in the old days, LAM, and a couple of private operators.
Oh my word, is that fair? Did you swap it behind your back? Well done, congratulations. Congratulations. So thank you, panel. Thank you very much. And please give them a round of applause. And thanks for spending the time with us today in the room.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Another important day. Brilliant presentations, in-depth discussions from eminent experts from around Africa and globally.
The South African market represents a strategic destination for British Airways International, and that's evidenced by its capacity into Johannesburg, double dailies into Cape Town, and just more recently they're flying direct into Durban now as well.
We therefore have shareholder oversight over a number of state-owned companies, being Eskom, Transnet, Denel, SA Express. So within the aviation sector, I think there's quite a bit that we can do within Africa, and I think it starts within the highest echelons of government, actually. Once you have cooperation from that level, you're able to ensure that you implement the policies.
Steps taken by the government of Angola during the last 6-7 months, they have been very liberal. You know, now you don't need visas for African countries, and also the residents from US, UK and many other countries to visit Angola. I think that's something we have been lobbying for the last 2 years.
We as operators in Nigeria, we believe in the open sky for Africa. We bring advantage and we open the economy for Africa.
For an airline at the back end of a lease, if you don't have a lessor that knows what they're doing and engaging with you 18 months in advance to be involved in the last maintenance events, you could get the lease expiry and not meet minimum return conditions. And with people that aren't experienced, that's the sort of thing that happens.
The critical issue is not about the countries. We should be clear on that. It's about specific airline operations within those countries, the operators. And you know, harshly, I would say, you know, as soon as the thing slips, grab that asset.
You know, you can lease 8-year-old A330s for $300,000 a month. You know, can some of these airlines afford $800,000 a month on a brand new aircraft? It does exactly the same. So, you know, there are cases where really they should be taking slightly used aircraft, not very old ones, that have been well maintained by, you know, major airlines around the world, rather than buying brand new aircraft, which, you know, in some cases they can't afford.
There were quotes such as financiers are more cautious with Africa
because of the lack of a legal framework and certainty on the African continent.
For the CFM presence in Africa, we have about a bit more than 50 customers, close to 1,000 engines flying, CFM 56 and LEAP engines. We have also more than 10 field service engineers that are deployed to our local customers, and one shop MRO that is located in North Africa.
We have an excellent presence in Africa. We have about 62% market share, and my goal is to get to 65% market share, period.
And so Embraer has had tremendous growth over the last 10 years in Africa. We tripled our presence. Now we have around 150 aircraft flying here. We expect this number to double again in the next 5 years, and probably triple with less than 10 years.
Bombardier, yeah, we've gone through a major change in the company over the last 3 years, with a complete change of management, complete refocus on the product and our core activities and our core business, and that has translated in our region here in Africa and the Middle East with significant growth.
Mitsubishi Aircraft has been developing the Mitsubishi Regional Jet in two aircraft family, a 90-seater and a 70-seater. It'll be equipped with the Pratt & Whitney GTF engine, a 1200 engine.
I think we have opportunities, and there is opportunities across Africa. We are here with financiers and bankers and people with pockets full of money, so there is opportunities. We will size it, and I think we will need you to make it happen as well.
There are some lessors who we've worked with in the past where they've had a slightly overinflated book value, and by consigning the aeroplane to us, they've allowed us to dismantle the aircraft, turn it into, say, 1,000 components, and then sell those over a number of years. That's a good way of amortizing that into something profitable over a shorter period of time, maybe 2 to 3 years.
We're dealing with a continent with 1.2 billion people, vast geographic expanses, 2,000 languages, 54 countries, 30% of the world's mineral riches, 15% of the world's population, 20% of the world's landmass, but 2.2%, 2.3% of global aviation occurring on the continent. So there's clearly an absolute disconnect.
The Kenyan government has announced plans to build a second runway. They've at JKIA, and I guess the initial tendering processes and so on has started for that. But it actually took a very concerted effort from first Kenya Airways and a few other aviation partners to demonstrate to the government just how important aviation was as a sector.
So there's a lot of banks and financial guys that's looking to support the industry and the continent. I think we must just put our heads down and focus and do it.
I'm really impressed at the determination in South Africa in terms of the transformation. And I was very particularly pleased that South African Airways sent a very large delegation to this conference, but I have no doubt in my heart and in my mind that South Africa can be the engine for aviation growth on the African continent.